Hey guys, welcome back to Honkai Star Rail. In today's video, I wanted to discuss Kafka before she comes out and the free-to-play quote-unquote issues with her, because there's a lot to this character. I think she's absolutely fantastic. You guys know on my Silver Wolf account, I am definitely pulling for her. I want to go through some synergies, some other ideas that I have about her. Not maybe key meta strategies the best, but some fun strategies that I've been thinking about in the lead up to Kafka. So let's get into it first with her skill summary, then we'll go through the pros and cons and talk about some of these other things. So her skills, basically what we know from the official released stuff that we've got is her skill is a cleave and it triggers dots. However, I am still of the opinion that it is only triggering the dot on the primary target purely based off this footage which we got in the dev live stream. Because if we look at this, she does that skill. So if we do that and then we go across frame by frame, we will see that if we go a little bit further, she's proccing big additional damage on that middle target at the end. There you go. So there's that big additional damage that comes there on the middle target. The other targets get hit, but they don't take that big additional damage. And as the battle plays out, you'll see, okay, so here's the same thing. So she does that big additional damage on that target. And then this guy takes his turn and he takes a massive chunk of shock damage. So that indicates to me that he was shocked, but he didn't get it. So that's something I want to follow up on when she does actually release. So we know exactly how that's working, but I do believe, based on that it is the primary target only. However, it could be full AoE. It would be better if it was full AoE, but I just wanted to cover that quickly because I'm not 100% sure how that works. Next up, we've got the passive. So after an ally uses a basic attack, she will launch a follow-up attack. Now, this could have other things tied into it, maybe through traces or something like that. We'll have to wait and see, but that is essentially what she does. Now, the one thing I want to note about this follow-up attack is follow-up attacks are great because not only do they add additional damage, but they add additional break on the enemy, and they also add additional energy regen, which we'll talk about when we go into my food for thought section. Next, we have the ult. The ult is an AoE and applies shock and does additional damage to shocked enemies. So let's go through. That's the basic kit. It's very simple, but it's all about that skill triggering dots, which makes her just an incredibly fun character in my opinion. So the pros that I've listed are a unique playstyle. She enables / amplifies other units, being the dot units. And to me, that brings long-term viability because she is that dot procker. So I doubt they're going to power creep her with another unit that does exactly the same thing anytime soon, meaning that as new dot-based units come into the game, she's always going to have that, maybe not top tier viability, but she's always going to have that viability with those characters to amplify their playstyle. So she's one of those ones, kind of like Silver Wolf, where she can be used with just any new character that comes out to enable them. Kafka's going to work the same with dot characters, which I really like. And then obviously I had to put Mummy in there because you know who you are. You'd be annoyed at me if I didn't. Then we go into the cons. She's not set and forget. It's not something like Blade where you build the dude and the dude just slaps face and melts everything and doesn't die. She's got a bit more. I feel like there's going to be a lot of different builds for Kafka depending on her team, depending on how you want to play her, depending on the enemy and all that stuff. So I don't think she's going to be that one unit where you just build her and then you're done. Not like Zila either, where Zila's like, okay, we get some crit damage, let's just melt things. Like Zila's pretty set. You just get your quantum set. You get whether you, I don't want to say speed or attack because it's always a dilemma on people, but you know, you get your one set and you're pretty much done with Zila and away you go. Kafka's a bit more unique in the gearing. And then also, you need multiple built units. Now, the reason for this is if we're using her to proc allies dots. Now, I do believe there's going to be a team where you have her as the solo damage dealer, which we'll talk about in a bit. But if you're using her to proc your allies dots, then you've got to have those allies built. And that is where it becomes a bit of a tough situation for free to play. To me, it depends how you word this. It's like, okay, for Kafka, you need to build other units or you get to build other units. And depending on what you say when you phrase that in your own mind is whether you're going to like this idea or hate it. To me, I like this allows me to build other units so that I can make them viable with her. That gets me really excited. I really like it. But if you're like, dude, to make Kafka work, I'm going to need to build these dot units, and then I'm going to need to like maybe build a dot unit for every element depending on the weakness of the enemy. If that's you, then maybe you don't want to go for the Kafka. But that is what gets me super excited. The fact that you need to and get to build other units with her to enable them to make them work, because you really do want those units built, because if they're going to be the damage that she is proccing from their dots and their break dots and stuff like that, then you really want them built, especially when we look at break, because level takes effect in that as well. So that's where I think Kafka, you know, whether that's a con or a pro is up to your sort of preference. Next up is the multiple gear sets. Now I mentioned this because, like I said, I feel like Kafka is going to have different builds depending on how you're going to play her. And for that, you're going to need different gear sets. Also, not just her. For instance, I think you're probably going to want a good break set, because then maybe you prioritize having one of your dot damage dealers be a breaker so that they really amplify that break dot so that she can proc the break dot and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be a very interesting one, but I do think multiple gear sets will be a thing. And then the other one I just wanted to mention is that Lightning AoE is getting pretty saturated. We got Serval now, who does have synergies with Kafka, so it's okay. But then we've also got Jing Yuan. So if you've got Jing Yuan, you may be looking at going, dude, am I like doubling down too hard? To that, it's up to you. I always think if you just like the playstyle of a character, that's what matters, not if they're filling a role, because let's face it, you're eventually going to do everything anyway. So that is my thoughts around that. So let's jump into the top synergies. And this is just based off knowing what we know about Kafka and just splashing my brain on the screen. Don't quote any of this. If this changes, I will do a guide. I'll let you guys know. But top synergies, I'm looking at Silverwolf for the Death Shred and the whatchamacallit, the resistance reduction, and also just changing them to lightning weak is going to be just fantastic. Then we have Bailu. Bailu is probably going to be the best synergistic healer with her, because Bailu, you know, you can run Bailu as a solo support depending on how well built your characters are. Solo defensive support, meaning that you can bring the extra dots, the supportive characters like Ting Yun or Silverwolf, and you can do that sort of thing. So I think Bailu is definitely going to be the best one. Plus it has the lightning synergy. You just bring it against lightning weak enemies and away you go. Then we've also got Ting Yun. Now, Ting Yun is one that I am very curious to see whether we end up playing Kafka with two other dot users or Kafka with Ting Yun and another dot dealer. Now, the reason I think Ting Yun's going to be a good option is because if you're playing with two other dot units in the same team, then it's a very heavy investment. And I feel like Ting Yun's just going to, you know, alleviate a little bit of that along the way. Plus, if you got Ting Yun and Bailu, they're both lightning. You got the lightning. You can just run a mono lightning against lightning weak enemies with Serval, and away you go. Obviously, needing the Bailu in there. If you don't have Bailu, obviously you're going to have to use whatever healer you have, or defensive unit for those that are still running only with the Natasha. Now, then we move on to the synergies down the bottom, which is just the dot units. And basically, this is going to depend really on what the enemy is weak to, on what you bring, in my opinion. If they're weak to wind, you bring Sampo. I think Sampo has the best like raw synergies because of the way he amplifies that dot damage. Also, I like the way Sampo, once you get Eidolons, he can like trigger wind shear dots as well. So it's like, it's snowballing onto that Kafka play. So Sampo is honestly the top pick for me personally when I pull for Kafka to pair with her, because I just think that synergy is going to be so fun, me personally. Serval has a good synergy because obviously lightning, you can run mono lightning and then you can just crush lightning weak enemies. And then we got Luca for the physical coverage. We don't know too much about Luca yet, so we'll have to wait and see how he functions, but essentially he's going to be that bleed character that you can proc the bleeds. Now, as for best team, I honestly think a team that I am looking forward to trying myself the most is going to be these top three units, with Kafka, having Kafka as like the focus. I feel like that would be a fun team where it's all about Kafka doing all the damage, just proccing her own, and you know, you can take that basically to any enemy team that is weak to lightning or quantum, and you're just going to be able to use Silverwolf to implant whatever you're lacking, and away you go. I think that's going to be a really fun team, but having said that, I'm also really excited to try the dot teams with Sampo ideally being the number one choice for me, and then I'll experiment with, you know, Kafka, two dot units units, and Bailu. We'll experiment with everything, but I think those are the main synergies that I see happening with Kafka. As we jump onto my food for thought section, this is where I like thinking. Now, if you guys know me, I love energy regeneration. It's just something that I find fun. I find it fun when I can ult a lot. Even if it is not the tippity top max damage, it is a fun playstyle for me. So I'm not saying this is going to be meta. This is just the food for thought section. And that is going to be we had the light cone for Silverwolf. Now, if you're using Silverwolf, that's the one where if they have defense break, you're getting energy. Now, if you have Silverwolf, you're probably going to leave that on her. It also has the effect hit rate. But for those that didn't get Silverwolf but want Kafka and have this like maxed out light cone in their arsenal, it could be an interesting play to team that up with. It won't work with Savol, but we've also got this 4-star light cone that applies defense shred for Nihility characters. So my thought is like using a Sampo with that cone and then slapping the Silverwolf 4-star cone onto Kafka to give her that energy regeneration, keeping in mind she will have pretty decent energy regeneration because she also have this passive with basic attacks where she launches a follow-up attack, which I'm assuming if that enemy is defense broken, that's going to proc that additional energy as well. And I feel like we might get some really high energy regeneration plays on Kafka so that she can be ulting super fast. We'll have to wait and see. It's something that I really love, so I will definitely experiment with, see how many, like see if we can get a 2-turn or a 1-turn ult on Kafka. I think it would be really sick, but we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. But that is something that I'm really excited about, just that sort of synergy, which if you've been playing from the start, you've got they're 2 4-star light cones. This one you got to pull, this one you had to be around for the event, but I feel like that is going to be a fun little thing to play around with. The other thing I put in the food for thought was the break set. Just talking about that idea of shifting those, having like one built break effect set, where like even if it's not optimal for every character, where it's like the break effect 4 set, the break effect 2 set, and you just have that built for prioritizing attack, speed, or you can do attack on boots, whatever you want, and then break effect rope, and just focusing in on that. And then you have this one set built that is like your subset for Kafka, which is like whichever dot unit you bring with her as the main breakers, because you want to like trigger their break dots and have that just deal massive amounts of damage. You have that one set built, and then it's just like you just like remove it off whoever's not weak to the enemy, and then put it on whoever not strong to the enemy, and then put it on, dude, I cannot speak. You put it on whoever's strong against the enemy, element wise, and they become your breaker, and then you've got this like sick break set. That's something I want to farm up on my account. I'm not quite there yet, but it's something that I'm going to do just for fun because I think that's going to be really nice. Then any new character, any new dot character that comes into the game, it's like, okay, let's just get this bad boy to level 80. Let's slap this set on and let's see how much we can proc on these dots. I think it's a little bit of fun, but yeah, there's probably going to be a lot more to Kafka. Like I said, I feel like she's one of the more complicated characters we've looked at in the releases because she isn't one of those just set and forget type characters, and there's a lot of different play styles. So I'm really excited for her. That's the pros and cons. Let me know if you're pulling for her. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll be going for her on my Silverwolf account, and hopefully we get it. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.